Craft Brewers Conference in Indianapolis is just weeks away, and we're throwing a party with some beer industry friends. We're calling it the Beer Me 500, 6 to 10 p.m., Tuesday, April 29th at the Hangar, just a few blocks from the convention center. We'll have food and beer, racing and golf simulators, and more. It's invite only, so if you're a professional brewer, reach out to your rep at any of the party co-sponsors. Those include Prairie Malt, Hopsteiner, Deutsch, and Omega. And if you're a craft beer brewing advertiser, just drop a line to Bryce on our team. I'll be there, of course, and look forward to sharing beers with all of you. For this episode of the Craft Beer Ring Podcast, I'm once again in New Zealand. We're in Motueka, and harvest is in full swing right in the middle of it as of this recording. And lots of things are happening here. It was brilliant. Drove up from our Airbnb in Upper Motree this morning, drove past hops on the drive up here. Those hops were the new farm for my guest here, Brent McGlashen. Welcome to the podcast, Brent.
Oh, thank you, Jamie. Pleasure that I'm seeing you here in this country and on our farm. It's fantastic.
Because I've seen you at CBC, seen you at the Firestone Walker Invitational. It's always been in the United States, and we've always had a good time hanging out. And here we are now on the farm in Motueka, the city that the hop was named after. And you all are multi-generational hop farmers and been doing it here for a very, very long time. I had a great conversation with your dad yesterday, and about a whole bunch of other things. You grew hops for Coors of all producers for a number of years. And anyway, so the course of this, we're going to try to keep this one quick and punctual and on point, because you've got fresh hops to get out to people, and people are coming to pick up fresh Nelson Sauvin in a couple of hours from now as they crank things up. And so we are going to talk about hop growing in New Zealand and hops in general, varieties, dynamics, et cetera, because, Brent, you all have a very close viewpoint with plants on the field. We're going to try to tap into your knowledge of that. Before we do it, Justin Thomas, president of G&D Chillers, says everyone who works here at G&D Chillers shares a common goal: to be on the forefront of innovation so we can solve problems for our customers. For a more sustainable approach to refrigeration, they've announced their latest innovation as part of their trailblazing Elite 290 line of propane chillers. The Elite 290 Micro Series uses a natural refrigerant, features a more compact design with variable speed fans, and offers near zero global warming potential. The future of sustainable refrigeration is here. Learn more about G&D's Elite 290 line. Visit gdchillers.com. And brewers, what if your yeast could do more than just ferment? With Berkeley Yeast, it can. They bioengineer ordinary strains and make them extraordinary, enhancing the flavors you want and eliminating the ones you don't. Now, in addition to competitive pricing, they're offering free overnight shipping in the U.S. on 5+ barrel pitches. Try it out. If you don't love it, they'll happily refund you. So why settle for ordinary when you can brew with better yeast? Visit berkeleyyeast.com to learn more and start brewing with science on your side. I have to put that U.S. caveat in there because here we are in New Zealand, and anyway. Also, a day in the life of a brewer is packed enough as it is, so why not let Old Orchard assist with your R&D? Custom blend development is available through their innovative R&D lab. Their bulk division supplies a wide range of beverage segments, making it a one-stop shop for flavoring beer and beyond. For more information and free samples, they're waiting at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com/brewer. Brent, you've got a beautiful country here, and it's so exciting to be able to see it up close and personal. And, even just driving up this morning past hop fields, your farm, Eggers, right next to it, it feels so comfortable.
We live in an incredible sort of a microclimate at the top of the South Island here, and that's why it is considered, quite a fruit bowl. You can grow anywhere from kiwi fruit to apples to pears to stone fruit to berries, everything you can grow around here. It's an amazing ecosystem.
There's so many interesting commonalities. It feels like both like Central Coast California in that same kind of way. Also with the kind of rolling hills and terrain. Also has some Willamette Valley vibes, that kind of, small mountains and, valleys and whatnot. And so, you see these commonalities. And and obviously, wine grapes are very popular here as well as all the other fruit, just as they are in all of those places. And so, you just find the similarities in the various places where all of these things have taken root. Of course, Yakima, of course, in the desert is a whole different, kind of thing. But tell us about the history of your family and farming here.
Yep. So where we're sitting now, we first picked up this land in the year 1900, so we're actually celebrating our 125th anniversary this year. So got a few things planned for that. It makes us one of the older farms in New Zealand, that's for sure. Sort of farms were taken over back when the settlers came, maybe 1850, 1860. So yeah, we're one of the older ones. I'm a fifth generation farmer. So yeah, we've got quite the history on our land here, and we've now also purchased another block of land, which is what we call our new farm, which is in the Muteri Valley. So it's about 15 minutes drive. The home farm here is situated right on the outskirts of Motueka town, and the Motueka township's always been renowned for its horticultural expertise, its horticultural work and things like that. Back in the 50s and 60s, if you weren't working hops, it was tobacco or apples and things like that. So it was a big industry back in the day, was tobacco here. There was, back in the day, about 600 odd tobacco growers on small scale, but back in the late 80s, that pretty much stopped overnight. So, and probably so did everyone's health too.
And then the hops came, or at least they started coming then.
Yeah,
they obviously existed long before that,
yep.
But a lot of that tobacco got replanted, and
yes.
A significant amount was replanted with hops.
Yes, correct. Yep, hops and into the likes of kiwi fruit and apples. So sure. the government were helping growers to find alternative crops, and hops was certainly one of them.
The government helping private industry? I don't understand that concept.
So with the kind of
sorry about that.
And giving funding for breeding and things like that.
Sure.
And it's been brilliant, and hence why sort of Joe's out seeing the plant and food research, as a government funded body at the moment. So.
That's true. Joe Stang is right as we speak, about 10 minutes away at the plant and food research office here, and seeing where all of their hop work gets done over there. So tell me about the history of hop growing here at Mac Hops.
So yeah, originally I think some of the first hops were grown back in New Zealand about 1880, 1890. There's documented history of them actually taking hops back over on the boats back to England from New Zealand, and a newspaper article from an English newspaper saying we received shipment of hops, amazing smell, quite different to what we're used to, way back then. So, and that was when they imported their own actual rootstock out here between the English, and I think the Germans also brought some out too. So, and in terms of our history, we haven't.
It's a similar timing, with the kind of move in the United States of late 1800s from upper New York and that area out west, and the building of the hops farms out in the desert.
Well, my amazement is who in the hell thought of a hop plant to go into beer from the start? I mean, it's a random sprawling vine unless you put it onto a structure being string, and
that's like a 500-year-old question. We will not find the answer to that. Sure.
So yeah,
if you look back at that history of beer was made with lots of different things, and it's almost a natural selection kind of process where they found the hops just work the best.
So history's repeating when you hear pumpkin beers and all sorts of things.
There's room for everything. And so, but for over the 5 generations now of this farm, you all have gone through a number of different phases. We'll just say that, Nelson Sauvin has not always been a darling hop of a hipster American brewers. Far, far from it. But you did get started even in the 90s growing hops, for an American brewer. Yeah. You've been working through this, and kind of followed the history of brewing as it has developed around the world.
I think what's quite amazing and quite unique is because we are down the bottom end of the world, we've had to be different and create different varieties. And that starts right back from the 40s and 50s in the breeding program. And that was mainly the breeding program back then was to delve into getting root rot, what would happen is you'd put your plants out and you'd get 2 or 3 years out of it, and you'd pretty much lose your whole hop garden. So we had a scientist here called Dr. Rudy Roborg, and he actually managed to breed that out. And in terms of world hops and breeding, that was phenomenal. So right from then, we knew we had good scientists here who could help get us these varieties. And Dr. Ron Beatson, of course.
Again, government support for science, actually creating viable, marketable benefit for the country's agricultural industry. Crazy how that works.
So absolutely, and we're very thankful for that.
Sure.
And you had Dr. Ron sort of took over his mantle from there, and Dr. Ron's now retired, or so-called retired, but he still loves it a lot, and he was there for 40 years, now with his successor being Kerry Templeton. And ever since the last 20, 30 years, the punch phrase, the motto for the hop breeding here has been to breed hops with a difference. We can't compete with the big producers of America or Germany, with their higher alpha and things like that. But what we can produce with is creating a stunning uniqueness to a hop that other people can't create anywhere in the world. Like you're mentioning Nelson Sauvin, that was bred about 25 plus years ago. And when we first put it on our farm, I remember walking up into the kilns, and I honestly thought a wild cat, which we don't have any idea, had come in and pissed on the side of the stairwell or something. It smelt just randomly awful. And I said to Dad, who in the hell would want to buy this stuff? But that was when we were dealing with commodity hops, and commodity hops back then, 20, 30 years ago, were pretty much all generic worldwide.
Sure.
You were just going for bitterness.
Right.
And when we started to get these interesting flavors, it didn't succeed in a commodity market, but the craft beer made it succeed in a niche market. And that's where we really started to take off. When I got back to the farm, I went to university, studied a Bachelor of Agricultural Commerce and Farm Management, loved it. It was great fun. But then there wasn't really much of an industry to come back to. Hops, we were in the real doldrums back then. And
when was that?
That was about the early 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah. So we ended up having a meeting with all our growers and said, hey guys, look, let's be realistic. We've probably got one more year here. We were down to a point where New Zealand hops wasn't creating enough production to be viable. We needed to have about 690 tonne, and the previous year we'd produced 640. Luckily, a thing called craft beer came along, and honestly, did save our little industry. And so they got a little bit more excitement about things, and I spent several years travelling, having a good time around the world and being part of different industries and doing different things, and brought back some of those ideas as well. Had the opportunity to work on Loftus ranches and see what it was like to be a bigger hop farmer. We only had small farms here in New Zealand up till then. We were down to 17 growers, and in that room we were like, holy crap, we're going to have to turn this thing around. And luckily, we managed to. And that's previous, like we mentioned before, we had 2 or 3 varieties that were the backbone, and they were creating about 30 to 40% of our production and sales. Say, for instance, Coors took a huge amount, and they were very helpful to the New Zealand industry, and we're very thankful. What
hop variety was Coors using back then? Because difference is not exactly in their vocabulary.
No, they were using
Alpha is. But.
Yeah, they were using Hallertau. So we had a variety of Hallertau that came over from Germany, and it got bred slightly different here. So we're getting a higher alpha out of our Hallertau. So they could therefore put it back into their beer and use a New Zealand Hallertau and go from there. So yeah, we've luckily had some great partners along the way who've really helped us steady the ship when we've really needed to, and it's kind of like the times we're in now, really. So
yeah. Well, let's talk about how what you grow has now developed, because we're talking about early 2000s at a questioning the future existence of this, to 2025 now. In agricultural terms, it's not a long time, and yet the amount of change that has happened, the amount of development, the amount of growth in farms, your own growth, the growth in varieties, replanting varieties, and then watching how this has continued to both expand, but also get more and more niche in varying directions, and then also that benefit of craft beer in terms of building an audience for you also means that brewers want to get even more involved, which changes the efficiency and the overhead and your approach to this. And so you've all had to constantly adapt and be nimble, as the way that you approach these year to year to year. I want to talk about all of that, but first, taste the modern flavors of indie hops at CBC this year in Indianapolis. Join Indie in Indy for 14 incredible collab beers to showcase Strata, Luminosa, Lorien, Audacia, Meridian, and more. Experience their newest hop Audacia in both a hazy IPA by Fidens and a West Coast IPA by Grains of Wrath. Dive the depths of Strata in T90, CGX, and Hyperboost forms with IPAs by Craft Coast and Flatland Brewing. Refresh your palate with the crisp, summery flavors of Lorien and an Italian Pils by Maui Brewing and a French Pils by Upright Brewing. Bask in the liquid sunshine magic of Luminosa with IPAs from Fort George and Bear Lake Brewing. Check out the full CBC beer lineup at www.indiehops.com and plan to stop by their booth number 3122. They'll be as happy to see you as you'll be that you made the effort. Indie Hops, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And are you a craft brewery looking to elevate your branding? Steel Chill Cups are the perfect promotional tool. Crafted from 100% recyclable steel and proudly made in the USA, these 16-ounce cups come in vibrant red, blue, green, and gray. Designed to keep beverages cold and frosty to the touch, they enhance the drinking experience at festivals, tastings, and tap rooms. Customizable branding options allow breweries to showcase logos and unique designs, boosting brand recognition. These stylish cups not only serve a practical purpose, but also become keepsakes for beer lovers. Discover how Steel Chill Cups can put your brand on every pour. Visit steelchillcups.com today. Also, did you know that Isuzu trucks have been the best-selling low-cab forward trucks in America every year since 1986? That's right, for more than 38 years, the legendary durability, remarkable performance, and low cost of ownership of Isuzu trucks have made them a favorite of work truck owners. You may have seen their ultimate craft beer truck that debuted at the Craft Brewers Conference in 2019. It has been there every year since. As members of the Brewers Association, they've partnered with breweries, suppliers, and distributors alike to support the craft beer industry. Whether you're looking for a self-distribution solution or one to deliver supplies, there's an Isuzu truck that'll fit your needs. Go to IsuzuCV.com and check out their impressive lineup, or visit an Isuzu dealer today and find out why now, more than ever, Isuzu trucks are the trucks you trust for the work you do. All right, Brent, let's talk about this kind of interesting evolution in a very short agricultural time frame. I think that meme, what it was, what it is now, kind of applies here. The business is almost, it's just dramatically different than it was 2 decades ago.
Absolutely. Yep. Financial wise and structure wise, everything's completely changed on its head, and you would never have predicted it.
So where's production at now versus the 640 that you were at before?
So people probably know there's a few different factions over here now who are supplying New Zealand hops, but we're part of the grower co-op, and there's 27 growers.
We're taking a neutral approach to all of that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm part of the co-op.
Sure.
We have now, we can produce up to 1,400 metric ton at this stage. This year, obviously, to match the markets as best we can, we've significantly reduced that.
Sure.
Because there's no point overproducing, it's just a waste. So, so that's the kind of fluidity we've had to have as well too, is work with the markets, work with our brewers and find out what is best, how can we match our markets, and if it comes with volume or if it comes with flavor or aromas or alpha, that's what we've had to do. And we've gone from a bed of hops of say 4 or 5 main staples. On our farm we're growing 15 different varieties, plus trial hops as well too. And the trial hops, yes, are always exciting, but it's also just as exciting to see the awards that come in from the brewers who are winning from using a different method of using one of the older varieties as well too. So it's all learning along the way.
Sure. Well, let's talk about some of that learning. 15 different varieties now. How do you talk to me about the kind of thinking that goes into this? Now, obviously, you're trying to both build new varieties and build have some volume out there so that people can enjoy some of these things, try some of these things. Brewers, as creative as today's craft brewers are, there's an inherently conservative element too, and they find something that works and they want to keep working that. And so, if new is your focus, you have to find a way to, continue sharing this idea of new out there, and building something while at the same time, trying to, be smart about the business and the approach.
Yeah, I think the big thing for us as well has been learning, what brewers want, because what one brewer wants is not what the other wants. So, and that's been brought around particularly with selections. And, when you're on the selection table in front of brewers and you learn exactly what they want, the next one beside it's completely different. And the way I've learned about things like that is it's often taken back to the farm level. Say, for instance, on our home farm here, we've got a sandy silt loam. We're very free draining. Irrigation water's just below our feet. That's all quite almost a coastal environment. Whereas our Mutery farm, which is only 10, 12 minutes drive away, is heavy clay, probably the heaviest farmed clay hops around. And we wanted those two differences. When we were looking for a new farm, we didn't want to have the same soil type or environment. So, and over the years, we've learned that, say, the likes of Nelson Sauvin, we can get a ridiculously punchy Nelson Sauvin, not of the grapey, winey diesel type, but of a passion fruity, real fruity one, which is just incredibly different.
From the heavier clay soils.
Correct, yeah, versus the home farm here. So that's what we also...
So there's even a terroir, quote-unquote terroir difference between the farms that you operate.
Yeah, and also physicality. So in the cone shape, it would change from a sandy silt loam to a cone shape up the Mutery farm as well in the clay. So you can have
even
these...
the cone shape changes in that terroir. Huh.
So you can actually have these differences that are only just down the road, but those differences we can therefore provide the craft brewing community and the greater community of beer, and it's in the same variety,
How do you test that? I mean, because you start this new farm, and how do you even figure out, what to plant where, how those things are going to happen? I mean, because you plant a whole field and that's a humongous investment. Yeah. And so, tell me about that testing process. How do you find out that, wait a second, these are going to be that much, because then it also takes a little bit of time for those plants to truly get established and become what they're going to be.
Yeah, so probably my real estate agent or the real estate agent we had thought I was a bit mad to start off with. We ended up going through about 7 different farms until we found the one we were after. And so I'd bring my spade along with me every time, or my shovel, and I'd start digging a hole in the ground, and he probably thought, what the hell is this guy doing? And so I'd dig down a couple of feet and have a look at the soil profile, and I'd hop in the car and I'd say, let's move on. And he was like, okay. Anyway, by the time...
Just digging little pits at every property that you're looking at. Okay.
And then by the time we got to the 5th farm, the real estate agent finally had cottoned on. So he gave me a phone call one day and he said, Brent, where are you? I've got a place for you to come and look at. And he said, I'm down the back paddock, come and get me. So he picked me up off the tractor. And I said, let's swing by the shed, I'll get you a spade. And he said, no, I've got that sorted. And so anyway, he had a spade in the back. But unfortunately, he hadn't done his research well on the spade. So he got one and I'd snapped the handle within about the second dig. And I said, we may need to find out where you get a quality spade from. But, for me, our investment proved to him, I'm looking at the land. The price is the price and it is what it is. But I'm going to invest for a lifetime, or my kid's lifetime, or whoever the hell takes the farm over from there. I want to know what I'm investing in, and that's underneath my feet. So all these random spots that I'm looking at is the knowledge that I'm gaining of what I'm trying to look for in a property. And I think some of that's been taken away from the likes of agriculture and horticulture, where people have actually just bought on a whim. They can assume their next door neighbour's growing a good crop of whether it's grapes or apples or kiwi fruit or hops. And, we were challenged by some of our locals where we've got our new farm. They thought that we would never grow the hops that we've been able to. And I enjoy those challenges.
Why did they think you couldn't do it?
Basically, because the clay soil needs a lot of drainage. And particularly my brother-in-law and a couple of the other guys up there spent a lot of time on the diggers with putting in special kind of tunneling drains and things, and that farm is phenomenal now, what it can do. It really is, and it's a credit to how they've developed the land. We haven't raced in and gone rip, shit and bust. We've actually strategically done what we've done, and we've had quite a number of pats on the back from the locals now. They said, wow, you guys have really done a fantastic job there. So we're very proud of what we've done, and it was a once in 5 generation opportunity, because and we can only thank the craft beer community for that, because the money that we've earned from these new varieties, the new flavors, the beers that the guys have made out there have gone back to reinvesting into the farm. We haven't spent anything outside of the farm. It's gone straight back in. And, to give you a number, that new farm's cost us between $15 and $18 million, for a family.
New Zealand or US?
New Zealand here.
Okay.
So that's a big investment for a family farm. It really is. So, and it's going to take us a generation to pay off. So that's just how we roll.
It's a long game, sure.
Exactly.
You've been in it for this many generations.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What do you think, in terms of how so you understand what the soil is there. Did you just start planting? Or is there variations, across that, because, it's a decent sized thing. And yes, there's some consistency in the soil, but there's also variations within any kind of farm of the soil types. Some of the we saw, like you can even see, in the Tapawera Valley, like different levels of the farm, like some of the, where, clearly the river, in ages past has hollowed out to different areas. And so you've, potentially got, just different terroirs, even on the, of tiers of this kind of thing on the same farm. How did you go about finding the right place to plant the right things?
So typically when you are looking at farms, you're right, there can be several different soil groups within a farm, and that can work to your advantage. Typically your aroma type varieties, which are going to be your earlier season hops, you would be putting them on the more lighter soil, the freer draining ones, the ones that don't quite hold the nutrients as well. And your heavier growing ones, you would be putting your Nelson Sauvin, your Waimea, your Motueka, your later season hops, because they need to hold longer, and they obviously can produce a bigger framed hop and a crop that has to hang for longer. So that's typically what we look for in a soil type. But we're always happy to try different things as well too, and have a block there that we're like, okay, we'll just see how this comes away, and then you may get a brewer come up and go, oh my gosh, we haven't gotten that before. And that's awesome. We're learning something as we go along there too. So
Sure. There are other, impacts of the way that is. It is kind of protected, a bit. There's a little bit of a ridge, on the, I guess that would be the northern side of, of the field that, and so it has this kind of like little tucked in feel, in the space that it's in I have noticed that definitely protecting some of these fields from some of the, occasional winds, becomes a, big function of the way that you all are kind of structuring them, and then, the way that, even throughout this area of broader Nelson, like there's very different, like, the Tapawera Valley has a different kind of rain and sun pattern, than this more kind of, coastal adjacent, area up here in Motueka, and then upper Motueka is a little bit different as well.
Yeah, and you're quite right, and I think that's an advantage. We've got these little wee microclimates that we can pinpoint where their advantages and disadvantages are. And yeah, wind is not a favourite friend of hops, and we know there's certain parts that do have more wind. And you're right, if you were planting a field out, typically you'd have your earlier season stuff on the protected side if it's going to dry out quicker. Things like that. Just like you're saying, Jamie, all these little wee and intricate things that you got to think about as you're going along for spacing out your varieties and where you want the best out of your field and yield and quality.
For sure. Well, I want to talk about specific varieties and kind of get into, now there's 15 of them to talk about, and some of the range that you get and experience from all of these, because it's interesting when you mention, different brewers resonating with different, types of, hop expression in these. I'm curious about what some of that range is, so that, as brewers are out there that are thinking about some of these New Zealand hop varieties that they are using, that they, have a broader range of descriptors to pull from, and can get at some of idea, because not everyone gets to go rub and sense this broadest range of what these things are. And so anyway, I would love to talk about each of these individual varieties, or as many as we can get through. Before we do that, breweries don't just need a point of sale system. They need a one-stop shop operating system. That's where Arrived comes in. Not only does Arrived offer a world-class POS built specifically for breweries, but they also provide an Arrived brewery management, e-commerce, and more to help breweries scale and thrive. From taproom to distribution, Arrived gives breweries the tools to streamline operations and boost profits, all in one powerful platform. Want to see the latest innovations in action? Visit Arrived at CBC 2025 booth 1865, where they'll be pouring beers and showing off the future of brewery tech. Or visit Arrived, ARRYVED.com to learn more. Cheers. Also, attention all brewers, beverage makers, and industry pros. If you're at this year's CBC 2025 in Indianapolis, there's one place you must check out. ProBrew at booth 2801, booth 2801 is where innovation meets refreshment. Come experience stunning animations of ProBrew's cutting-edge beverage processing and packaging equipment in action, including the powerful ProFill rotary can filler and seamer and ProCarb carbonation and nitrogenation system. After experiencing their top-tier tech, why not grab a beer at their pouring station and bar? See ProBrew's solutions in action, chat with their experts, and enjoy a perfectly poured beverage on them. Don't miss it. ProBrew, booth 2801, ProBrew, brew your beer. Also, upgrade your fermentation game with Unitank 2.0 from SS Brewtech, featuring a laser-welded cooling jacket for efficient and precise temperature control, an innovative silicone racking arm, and a carbonation stone that lets you carbonate right in the fermenter. Unitank 2.0 is engineered to help you get the most out of your fermentations. Available from 7-gallon up to 1-barrel sizes, Unitank 2.0 will be right at home in your homebrew setup or producing pilot batches at your commercial brewery. Visit ssbrewtech.com to learn more. All right, Brent, where do we, if we're talking about New Zealand varieties, where do we start?
Well, you've probably got your big ones that the craft brewers will know out there, and it's the likes of your Nelson Sauvin and the new ones that are coming on, sort of Nectarine and Superdelic and things like that.
Well, let's talk. Nelson is still is now the biggest volume hop for
Yes.
for you all.
Yep.
Let's start with that one. In terms of range, in terms of this kind of expression, you mentioned this kind of, there's this kind of sharper, gooseberry kind of character, but then there's also this, kind of fruitier passion fruit, and more round kind of note. Talk about, what that range looks like and how different brewers resonate with different parts of it.
Yeah, and I think that's been a classic for us, and as well too, as it's been in the system, it's developed even more, as the plants have aged or as things have come along, and so we've learnt more about it. The original range, we would have said catty or diesely and stuff like that. Nowadays, like you're saying, we have got such a big range, and we're finding that it fits in between soil types particularly. So if you are looking for a real fresh West Coast IPA or something like that, you'd be trying to search out one of the lighter soil grown Nelson Sauvin, which would be on a sandy or a stony soil of Tapawera or the Motueka area. And if you're looking for a heavier hitting hazy IPA of Nelson Sauvin, or even a base Nelson Sauvin for a West Coast or something like that, you'd be looking for a clay grown or something that's going to give you a different kind of a fruit, which is the passion fruity style thing, or a bit more tropical stuff in there. So yeah, and we're learning this stuff as we're going along, and some brewers will specifically have two different forms of Nelson Sauvin that they know which one works on one and which works on the other. So
different selections depending on where in that kind of IPA spectrum the beer is going to be.
Yep, I've been, we'll be at CBC again this year, doing the sensory there and selection, and often the brewers will have a pile, right, okay, that there is going to be for a certain type of style, this one's going to be for that. And I think that's a great advantage. You're going to you're going to a spice cabinet, and then that spice cabinet, and you can select different spices in the same range. I think it's very unique and quite special.
How does pick timing impact Nelson in that regard? Soil type, it's interesting that you say that might be your primary selector in some of these differences, but that pick timing also, has some impact too.
Yeah, pick timing, particularly for the oils. If you are going to pick a little bit of an earlier Nelson Sauvin, you may not quite have the oil content that you're hoping, or could maximize out of that cone. And it's not to necessarily say what's going to come first before the other. But when you're trying to maximize everything, we're harvesting sunshine as farmers. And as we do that, we are trying to create what we can get into that hop in that year. We can't do it the following year. Last year, 2024, was phenomenal for flavor, aroma, and everything. We had a near drought conditions. We just managed to keep up with watering for the crop. And the Nelson Sauvin that came out of there was absolutely stunning. I would almost
like these stressful conditions create some delicious hops.
Yep, exactly. And sunshine hours, everything like that.
Yeah.
We were mentioning when we had the talks and the seminars a couple of days ago, there's a uniqueness about here in New Zealand, the UVA, UVB, light rays, everything like that. sort of the depletion of our ozone layer, which we've got over our heads. For me, out in the field, I don't normally take my shirt off. It's not because the ladies would come running. It's because skin cancer is a big problem over here,
right.
and it's those UVA UVB rays. What are they doing to our hops? Are they producing the X factor that we can get out of our hops? And that's Nelson Sauvin, case in point. Has it developed over time that it's situated and happy where it's at? Now we can pinpoint exactly what different flavor profiles we can get out of it.
Sure. Well, so then after that, Nectarine?
Yeah, Nectarine, obviously, it's the...
Which is crazy that's such a big hop. Nectarine, then Superdelic, the next two biggest hops, given that they're still so new. Yeah,
they are still new. And Motueka's in there as well, too. Right. So if we touched on Motueka, it's from a Sarts variety, so we can therefore compete with other Sarts type varieties around the world. But to get a lemon lime flavour profile, heavy citrus from it, it's quite stunning. It's not a favoured hop of growers to grow because it's quite a light hop, and to put through your machine, you're losing quite a lot. Goes out into the compost. It can be a bit disheartening, but we also. I think it's got a lot more potential in the world of beer, Motueka. We use it at the research plant or when we're doing our sensory, because it's a taste and a flavour profile we know. So we go back to Motueka as our control. So we'll have 10 or 12 different lots that we're sampling every week of single plot trials of new varieties that have potential of being future rock stars. Motueka is always our guide. Is it better than Motueka? What's the benchmark? That is our benchmark, and then it goes on to the next hurdle. It's like going through the Olympic finals when it comes to that sort of thing. But the flavour profile it gets off. Say, for instance, likes of Sam from Other Half. He loves his Motueka, and he can get completely different flavour profiles out of them. It's a great hop. Moving on to the likes of Nectarine and things like that. Nectarine is now 19, nearly 20 years old. It was not released when its sister was released, which was Waimea, because that was back when the world was wanting more alpha and bittering content, and Waimea, the variety, was perceived to have more then. So that was released prior to Nectarine, because Nectarine carried more punch than anyone was used to back then. So I remember when I had Matt...
It had all this flavor and aroma, but not as much alpha.
So I remember when Matt Brynelson was out here, I said, Matt, can you come and smell it? We've got a couple of unique ones out here. And he opened up the bag and he was like, wow. And the punchline for that hop has quite often been wow, because it really is quite something. And it's a hop that can do 2 or 3 hops worth of work inside one beer. It really is unique, whether it's the stone fruit you're looking for, a bit of pineapple, a bit of all sorts. It's
how does that one range? Between different growing areas and seasons.
Yeah, it's quite consistent, to be honest, and it's a great grower's hop. The big thing we're learning is the pick window is very important, and for that. We give it about a 6-day picking window, and that's often the amount of allocation, maximum allocation that any farm will get, because then we know that we've got inside our peaks and troughs, we've got a good range there. We're not tipping over the edge where things are going to get into the onion garlic kind of category. We know that our growers can therefore have the machinery, the kilning, and the facilities to harvest it inside the optimal window. And being a benchmark hop, we need it to do that. We can't afford for it to all of a sudden get a bad name for that sort of reason, for us being careless and not providing the best product we can put out there. So
you all kind of cooperatively manage that and say, hey, we're going to try to keep the amounts that each grower grows, at this certain point so that everyone can harvest it in that kind of optimal period.
So when you're talking about hop farms, often there's percentages. So there's percentages of what varieties you tend to grow. You may be growing 25% of Nelson Sauvin, you may be growing 15% of Nectarine, 20% of Motueka, and that gives you also your timing of harvest windows of when you've got your capabilities of how you can harvest. I wouldn't be putting in a farm of 50% Nelson Sauvin, 30% Riwaka and 20% Nectarine, because I know that I could not harvest that in the right time. Sure, I could harvest it, but I'd have crap and then I'd have rat shit at the following end. I'm not prepared to give that to my customers. So yeah. So that's why henceforth people say, why have you got so many varieties? I was like, well, isn't it great? It means we can absolutely pinpoint and nail exactly what we want to harvest when we believe that harvest is right. And that whole question of when is a hop ready? Well, you've got to rely on the farmer as well as the science behind the things to go, actually, this is my soil type, this is my region, I've got the confidence in knowing this is when I want to give my product to the world. So, and I think that's an important thing to remember. We often have a few brewers who do push the envelope and they say, oh, you should let this variety hang longer. So we do, and we pass it back to them like, oh, no, I don't really like that. And we're like, well, we kind of know, but we had to prove it to you.
Sure. That's true. I mean, these, you've got, what, about a month of kind of overall harvest window. You've got some pretty big capital investments in, the picking equipment, the processing, equipment here, the hop picker, as well as all of the machinery, cutting the vines down, transporting them here, and it really gets used for that 1 month out of the year, and so it's a lot of capital investment for something used in a very tight window. But it just has to be that way, and you can't do it another way.
And I think one thing that people who have been coming out over the last few years have commented on, most of our facilities are all family run and everything like that with great staff behind them. But we're not doing a 24-hour shift. We're working sort of the daylight hours, 7 till 7, things like that. But of course, drying continues on sort of 24 hours. But
there's also tractors pulling trailers, not giant trucks.
Yeah,
it's funny looking at it compared to Yakima, where it's just like truck after truck after truck, and they're all big trucks with just giant stacks of vines on the back.
And then
it's a little different. It's a little
And then that relates back to our hop garden structure. How we've got everything structured. So of course we're narrower and shorter. So we're on about a 15 to 16 foot trellis, whereas America is wider and taller. So
America's what, about 18?
Yeah, about 18 and about 3 meters. So about how many feet's that? I don't know. That's a spastic language, feet. So yeah, it's in a difference. And then you go to Germany and they're wider and higher still. So the different growing regions around the world have found out what they are happy to grow with, how they grow their varieties. Tractors for us give less compaction. We use vine pullers as opposed to top cutters. Again, soil compaction. We're trying to keep our soil as stable as possible we can in the environment it's growing, because you're not going to move soil. The only time you move soil is when you're out there with a cultivator and you're trying to not pound the shit out of it. You're trying to move it gently, get rid of your weeds and everything like that. So
the thing I love, and I've loved watching the most, is just how clean the bottom of everyone's bines are right now before harvest. It's like, how do they clean out the bottoms of those plants? And it's remarkable. It's sheep.
Yep.
It's the sheep. You guys you use sheep to just clean out all of the the mass around there at the bottom of the vines.
They are fantastic employees, sheep. Yep. Yeah. They come in on the truck and they don't ask for overtime or anything like that. They just go out there and eat the hops. And there's
we also saw them in apple fields yesterday. Yep. Just eating the old apples off the ground. They're remarkable, remarkably effective.
I've been reached out by a couple of growers, particularly in America, who have wanted to integrate it into their system, because they can see, when you do clean those vines out in the bottom, you've got airflow as well too. And we're lucky in New Zealand. We don't have the powdery or downy mildew problems, but if you can get airflow into that part of your plant, it's got to be a benefit. And I've even written something for one of the USDA papers, and probably because I'm from New Zealand, they didn't know what I was talking about. But we find it a huge advantage. It's also completing the cycle. You got sheep that are doing their thing, processing
they can fertilize a little bit while they go, naturally.
Exactly. So, and we have
although you pull them out after a certain point, so that there's not too much of that closer to the harvest time.
No, absolutely. We've got time frames, basically like a sheep MRL. So we've got to pull them out.
Get those sheep into the field now. so that's really funny, but cool to see these kinds of localized variations on that make total sense, because there are just tons and tons of sheep in this country.
And that has also added to what we do internally inside our row to keep the soil structure together. We do grow cover crops, and we've grown them for years. So when the the buzzword of regenerative cropping came out, 4 or 5 years ago, which is, we kind of shook our heads going, but we've been doing that for generations. So
it's just common sense.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. So,
well, let's get back and talk about Superdelic. I think that's the next hop on our list.
So Superdelic is a fantastic up-and-comer, and hopefully some of your listeners out there have experienced whether drinking it wise or brewing with it wise. We've started a program called the Brent Brewers Program, and it was NZH 102 originally. So probably about 6 or 7 years ago, it was one of the originals in there, and it was the ones that we saw a lot of promise from. And it's basically just continued from there and it's really blown us away. Again, there's more being propagated for next year to try and meet the demand for it and everything like that. And without tipping the ship, we want to make sure that the variety is going to be stable inside the market that requires it. But phenomenally different. It's got fantastic oils. It's got a very punchy, unique sort of lolly, candy floss, berry sort of flavour, which is, for Superdelic, I relate it to being like the plate. So you go to any restaurant or whatever, and you've got a plate to put stuff on. So Superdelic becomes your base, and you can put any other hop on there, and it makes it absolutely hum. So
interesting.
Yeah,
so you're saying that that's more of a complementary hop than a,
look, you can still do single hop brews with it, but honestly, I would. A dual purpose a 2 or 3 hop brew in that system, wow, it really does shine. And you'll get brewers who'll say, we've never gotten that out of our Citra or Simcoe or Nelson Sauvin, but when we put it with Superdelic, you're talking about a hop that's got between 2, sometimes up to 3% total oils, and it's almost like a sheen in there that's pulling everything, bit of goodness from that beer and holding it. And I think there's one thing we've learned as well too, that the New Zealand hop varieties seem to really, once it's added into a beer, many, even the last couple of days talking to a lot of brewers who've been out here for Harfest have said the same thing. We can just get hold power, in our beers, and also we can get the ability for shelf life stability as well with New Zealand hopped beers. And we're like, well, that's fantastic, and it would be great to delve in with a bit more science around that. What is creating that?
Shelf stability aided by that. Yeah. Interesting.
So, yeah.
Any variety or any dynamics to Superdelic that you find, between the lots that you harvest?
For me, Superdelic, you're going to get quite similar in terms of the aroma, but if it's kind of the hop that you'd delve into the oil side of things, and you'll see the difference of where it's grown in terms of soil type and environment. Typically, the harvest window is very similar. Regionality, we're all harvesting it within 3 or 4 days. So typically, it would be anywhere from about the 17th of March through to about the 21st. And that there is always the sweet spot of hop growing. You can have your hops that are on either edge of it, but always when you've got that middle season harvest stuff, that is where you pull out those hops that are, you've got your Citras, you've got your Nelson Sauvins, you've got your Nectarines, things like that. It's that sweet spot in there, which obviously, it can be even to do with the diurnal change and everything like that, when the temperatures change and things. So, we know there's a cluster of hops varieties worldwide that fit into that category. We've also got to find the ones on the edge that give us that difference as well too, so we can continue, like you say.
Helps you make the mix.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how stuff comes out this year, given all this rain that you're now getting right here around harvest, and in this week, and could be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like we were saying, the 2024 crop was just sunshine the whole way through. It was like we were growing hops in Yakima. But this year we had a great growing season up till Christmas time, when the vines are just getting over the top wire. That's when they put their branches out and start to set their burr or their cones. We got a very dull period for 3 or 4 weeks, which was very unusual. The Motueka Nelson region is very popular with the campers, and people come from the cities and things like that, and they didn't spend much time on the beach swimming this year. So, yeah, that's obviously a good sign, but we were lucky that, 6 weeks later, we've had great sunshine, great warmth, everything like that. So it's really turned the crop around. So again, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. We've got to do what she gives us. So
Sure. Let's talk about Riwaka maybe next. That one's an interesting hop, as we found. The growers tend to not necessarily love it because it doesn't look, it's one of those hops that it's very effective at what it does. But agronomically, it always maybe looks somewhat anemic, and the cones are really small, and and so it's a challenging one. But it's also, from a brewer perspective, a lot of brewers love it for the way that it does just what you talk about with Superdelic, help makes other hops better.
Oh, Riwaka is, I call it the investment hop, because you don't have to use much of it. And sure, it's one of the most highest priced hops on the world market, but there's a reason for it. When you're getting half to less than half production off it, the farmer still's got to make money to be able to grow stuff. So yes, we've gotten to a point now. We believe that we've narrowed down some of the problems. We'll openly say it's got a root rotting issue in the fields, and for some reason seasons are worse than others. And particularly once you've done your first year crop, it's the second and third year crop that takes an absolute hiding. So it takes a while. In terms of the structure of the plant, it's got less roots that stick out. So it's got more storagey type roots as opposed to feeding roots. So a different structured plant. For some reason, it gets attacked after harvest, and some years are good, some years are bad. So we could plant a field and we could lose anywhere from 20 to 60% of the plants next year, which is bloody disheartening for a farmer. That's for sure. But its flavor profile is phenomenal in a beer, and it's very hard to explain.
You said it earlier, and I think it might have gotten lost in the kind of conversation, but and it's something that I've also heard talking with other brewers over the last couple of days. You can't use Riwaka in the same kind of quantity that you would another hop. It is more powerful than that. You need to dial it down so that it's in its sweet spot. Use less of it. Use it in the way that it should be used, and it won't come across. You don't want to. If you just think about these hops as kind of fungible, of this amount of this is going to be similar to this amount of this, then you're going to fail at that kind of thing. You need to think about the oil content and just how that hop is going to present in the beer.
But how amazing is that you've got a super powerful hop just like that, and you can just add it, and all of a sudden I explain it as putting the gold dust on top of the brew, because I suggest to brewers you only need 15-20%, and that would be a lower addition for a lot of brewers around there, but you do a brew like that and do another brew without it, and it's chalk and cheese. So.
And interesting that it's such an important hop now in kind of New Zealand lager, New Zealand Pilsner, that kind of it's one of those kind of go-to cores that New Zealand brewers use in that kind of lager capacity. So, where do we go after Riwaka?
You get down to your sort of varieties that used to be, say like a Wakatu, which used to be the New Zealand Hallertau, which is the one that Coors used to use a lot of. And of course, with the swing back to the slightly lager Pilsner based beers that are coming in, I don't say fashion, but coming back again with a vengeance. It's a very, very good hop for that, and
coming back again in new context with new flavors and
so
West Coast pills for us, New Zealand pills for you. It's a beautiful evolution. I
agree. It's not marketing or at all like that. It's these hops, and that is a case in point with some of, let's say, the more traditional hops that we have had. We're finding brewers going, let's brew that beer that we brewed back several years ago, because we know those hops, and let's dial it back a little bit. So it's quite fun to see these hops come back in vogue. Let's put it that way.
Sure. Any other interesting hops of those that you grow that you find some kind of variance or breadth within?
There's always excitement about the new stuff that's coming on board, and like I was saying before, the new program we've got, the Brent Brewers program, that gives us the opportunity to have 60 or 70 brewers around the world who are trialing these new hops, basically on behalf of other brewers around the world, to find out where they fit. And
these been growing here? You were growing them over at Plant Food Research? Or?
So they typically, at Plant Food Research, they're our breeding partners. and for New Zealand Hops, the cooperative, and they will grow up to about an 80 plant trial, and then I'm lucky enough that on our farm we take it from then on, and we can grow anywhere from the 80 plot trial up to 3,000 plants, which is typically a hectare of growing. So we then further expand that variety to send it out to the brewers, because we believe there's something special. Once these hops have gotten into this bracket of a 1 hectare trial, that means they have beaten out probably breeding worth maybe 15 to 20,000 other single hop cultivars to get to where they are. So to get to this point, we believe they're good. We just need it to be solidified by the market, by the brewers, by everyone else. So like I say, Superdelic has come out of the program. Nectarine was pre the program, but pretty much was what made us realise we need to get closer to the brewers and understanding what certain hops are going to get out for it. So we've now got new ones like NZH 106, which is a Riwaka sister, Riwaka daughter, which is really quite exciting, because breeding terms, is it going to create things like the Riwaka characteristic? Is it going to be easier to grow for the growers, or is it going to be better to brew with? And that's things that we're all learning along the way. NZH 109, again, is I think it's going to be an incredible hop on the world market. I've never smelled anything like it. It's like shoving juicy fruit chewing gum up your nostrils. It's,
boy, that's a pleasant thought.
Yeah. So, and again,
there's some interesting stuff on the horizon there too.
Yeah. But yeah, on the horizon, and you take it back to the traditional stuff like we're talking about at the start of the conversation, something like Rakau, and that's a very heavy hitting stone fruit hop, and the guys on sort of San Diego and things like that, they've really picked it up as being quite a baseline hop for them. And it's unique that you can place these in certain areas of whether it's the States or whether it's in the UK or Europe or even into Asia. They're pulling different nuances out of these hops, and it's a lot of fun to see where they develop and evolve.
Sure. Well, let's we got to wrap up here. And let's step out and take a look at the big picture. What gives you the most pause in the future, and what are you most excited about? What kind of keeps you going, keeps you driving, and what are you most excited about to see? So maybe we start with some of the concern, and then we end on that hope.
Yeah. So look, all of us listening out here, we understand that economies worldwide aren't as strong as what they should be, and it's going to take a while for the world to get back on its feet. We've gone through that swear word that was COVID, and everyone, not only in your own personal lives, but in your business life, it takes a hit. So it'd be great if we could have an Olympics or something like that in the next year or two, which we probably have. I forget which day what date we're up to, but to get the positivity back into society again, and that gets people out there into the pubs and drinking and having a good time. Of course, we don't want to promote excessive drinking. We want to promote people who are, back when craft beer started, people were going into places to try new stuff. Go and try that new stuff, because it's taken the researcher to research it and produce it to breed it. Then it's taken the grower to grow it. It's taken the brewer to brew it. And all along the way, you're crafting something that you hope that the customer's going to go, wow, this is amazing. That's the exciting side for things. I try not to dwell on the negative. The negative side of things, we know that the world of hops, there's got to be at least 10,000 hectares pulled out around the world minimum. There's an oversupply. There's no hiding that whatsoever. Unfortunately, it's not a good situation for a number of farmers out there with some big overheads that need spending. We've got to particularly look at what we are spending year in, year out, and go, right, we've got to pull back on that or pull back on this. We're desperate to hold on to our staff. We've got amazing staff, beautiful people that we employ, so we've got to be smart with what we do with our business. And it now is focusing towards, we do need a bit of diversification, probably in our own farming system as well too. And that's not just with different hop varieties, that comes with different crops. So we've got to look at it as a whole, and it's just like a brewer. A brewer may be going into may have gone into a salsa and it's become quite a success for them, or they may go into a hop water, which is completely unique, and it's a diversification inside your own business. And I think we all need to look at that as well. So,
well, I think that's I agree with you 100%, and that's a great place to bring this to a close. The future of sustainable refrigeration is here with the G&D Elite 290 Micro Series. Berkeley Yeast bioengineers ordinary strains to make them extraordinary. Old Orchard's R&D team is ready to work with you on custom blends and specialty ingredients. Taste the modern flavors of indie hops in 14 different beers poured at their CBC booth 3122. Discover how steel chill cups can put your brand on every pour at steelchillcups.com. Isuzu trucks are the trucks you trust for the work you do. Arrived as your one-stop brewery operating system. Visit ProBrew at CBC booth 2801 and see where innovation meets refreshment. And SS Brewtech's Unitank 2.0 will help you get the most from your homebrew and pilot batch fermentations. If you've enjoyed this podcast, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to Craft Beer and Brewing. We certainly appreciate your support and love bringing these conversations to you all over the planet, wherever interesting people are doing interesting things with beer and the ingredients that go into beer. Brent, if people want to learn more about what you do here at Mac Hops, about NZ Hops, sorry, I can't mispronounce that, NZ Hops, where do they find you?
Instagram's a good spot to look at. So the New Zealand Hops Instagram page, and also Mac Hops NZ, our own farm page, which you can see what's going on the farm. So,
if you see this tall Kiwi rolling around CBC, blonde hair, blue eyes, and at least several inches tall, even taller than me, with a phenomenal accent and some boots that show that he's been working, stop Brent, say hello, and I'm sure he'll share his hop gospel with you.
Absolutely.
We will see you in not too long here in Indianapolis, Brent. Cheers.
Yep. Cheers. Thank you very much, and great to see you out here, Jamie.
Great to see you too. Cheers. This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.